And we're live. So today it's Epic Tales in the building, and today I'm with two of some of my favorite booktubers, AJP and the Black and Blue Color Reader, Dan. Now, all three of us, we've read Blood Meridian, and we are crazy, crazy fans of this book. And every single aspect of it just is captivating, and just like the writing and like the subtext and the philosophy and the ideas and the characters. My god, the characters. There's just so much for us to like talk about today, and I honestly can't wait. And yeah, like, if you would like to introduce yourselves, if my introduction was insufficient.
Go ahead, AJ.
Okay, so I've been a big fan of this book since I was a real young lad. I read this book way too young, and I was way too stupid to actually understand it when I was like, let's say around like 10 or 11 or so. I was pretty young. I can't remember the exact age, but
Who the hell let you read that book at 10 or 11? He was
Hey,
watching you, bro.
it was in a public library at the school. It was right there. It's like, oh, Blood Meridian. It's about cowboys. I can't wait to read it. And then it's like some of the most like brutal shit you could possibly read. It was such a beautifully grotesque book, and I didn't understand any of it as a kid. But as I grew older, sort of like with William Faulkner, I kind of grew to appreciate like just the beauty and like the genius of this book. And McCarthy in general as an author, like he's just such a masterful writer of prose, of character, of just all these contextual ideas being interconnected in every single little thing. And he's such a major inspiration as a writer because the dude, like he is like the living essence of a writer. He just has worked his ass off. He's lost marriages, homes, entire like families because of his desire to write. And you can just see it with his works, just like the passion and the creativity and the soul within his works. Like he's like probably like the quintessential American author, besides like Hemingway or Flannery O'Connor, like we have over here. And just like, yeah, pretty much just like that. How about you go next?
So that was basically what he told me, and I was like, okay, I need to read this book. And I'm so glad you recommended that book for me, because like I have like so many thoughts that I would love to share.
Yeah, so I got on BookTube, and I was just, I'm a dark fantasy kind of dude. And you get, you have your certain channels that do that, and most of them picked up Blood Meridian, and they're like, this is the darkest book you'll ever read. And I was like, all right, like, let's give this a shot. And now I can't fucking stop thinking about it. This is not a fantasy, kind of, maybe a fantasy book, maybe a little mystical character in there, but this book weighed on me. And it was more the thematics. Yes, you know what? The writing style weighed on me because you're like, and 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 then you're like, where's my fucking periods? and like the writing style definitely weighed on me. But the things that he painted, like, and when I say painted, I mean he was an artist. Like he painted this archaic scene, and this with just I can't, like I'm getting flustered, right? Because it was just it was phenomenal. And for a book to make me still think about it 4 weeks after I've been reading it, and it's just I can't even put it into words.
No,
What he did in this book.
for sure, I'm going to be thinking about this book for a very long time, and not just thinking about it also in respects to, okay, I have to reread this thing, because like I did a lot of like, rereading chapters or rereading sections, and like, because I was listening to the audiobook at the same time just to like fully grasp it. And every time I would find something that I wasn't even looking for, because like his ability to set themes and just like describe something in a way that sets the scene perfectly, so that a character is conveyed very well, or like an action, or like the sequence of events are happening just makes sense and flow in your head, is so brilliant. I was just like stunned. And yeah, like this is a book that definitely like upper echelon in terms of like my rankings for like books that will have an impact on me. I don't know how it's going to impact how I read books and how I write, but I know that it's going to be a major influence moving forward.
I can definitely see why. Like, this book is definitely like sort of like a one of a kind when it comes to the prose and how McCarthy presents like all these ideas and everything like that. It is sort of like an acquired taste at times for most people if you're not used to, like, you know, the no punctuation, no like symbols or anything like that. It's more so a case of, it's a very much, you got to get used to the writing style, and then you can appreciate the genius from there. And one of the things about Blood Meridian is that it's also kind of different from other McCarthy's works. Like, each book has its own personality when it comes to how he presents it and how it handles itself. With Blood Meridian, it's very much sort of like third person, omniscient and limited. Like, you don't really get perspectives into the characters, you don't really understand a lot of what they do. You get some soliloquies from, like, you know, Gladden down the line, and maybe something from the kid within his dreams, but the book is very much like a grand epic, like sort of like how a Nordic epic would be, like the Epica, or anything along those lines, typically from like the Tyene, or a very much a work about actions and legacies, about what we leave behind, and sort of like the grand scale, like meaningless at the same time. It's sort of like our actions very much define what we did during that era, like especially for the scalping gears, like all that atrocity, all that warfare, all the destruction. It's very much like put to the force here and very much portrayed objectively, but it's still like so epic. Like, you're reading something out from like the Iliad or the Odyssey or the Aeneid, I think would be a more apt comparison there, with how brutal and disturbing it could get within its themes.
Yeah. Shogi, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Narsil, AJP should introduce McCarthy to me, and I'm so grateful. Um, just from the way AJP has really he has very high standards when it comes to like what he reads and where he draws his inspirations from. And listening to him just like talk and talk about McCarthy, I knew that I had to check his stuff out. Now, I started reading this book like maybe 2 years ago, and then I lost it in the airport because I was like going through like the worst, what they call it when you fly and like your head is all over the place. And yeah, like I lost it. But then I remember from the first time I was reading, it was so dense for me. I hadn't even got to chapter 4. But then when I was reading it again, I kind of got the same kind of feeling. And then when I got to chapter 4, when he was describing like those guys on horseback coming to like just the way he described it and the way he set the scene, and how like the massacre that followed that, I was like, after reading that chapter, I was like, holy shit, like I need me some of this. I need me some of this. And I like the fact that this is writing that doesn't hold back. Like I don't know what his editing process was like in terms of taking stuff out and removing, but like the book felt like he left everything he wanted to say on the page. And like to what AGP was saying in terms of how you don't really get much like introspection, you don't really get to see exactly what the character is thinking. It's all about action, and being able to interpret. Like throughout my time reading the book, my brain was trying to figure out where these characters were at through their actions. So just that ability to participate with Cormac McCarthy in the story is like, I've experienced it. I experienced some of it in Baker's writing, and I've experienced it in writing here and there. But Cormac McCarthy's execution of that was just brilliant. Like it was so epic, so epic, and just being able to co-create with him like that it was definitely a unique experience for me.
Yeah, I think I don't know about you guys. Do you feel that there was a reason for us not to be so connected with these characters, that he wanted to disconnect us from the characters and the violence, and not give us, purpose, or a lot of people see the kid as good, but we never really got his perspective as everything was going down. You know, I'm wondering if McCarthy actually did this, if this was on purpose, that we did not really get into the heads of the other characters that were in this, this scalping crew.
Within that regard, it is intentional by McCarthy. He's very much like one of those showing off, not really telling you about how these characters are behaving and why they're doing what they're doing. You get more so the hints of how they interact with other people, and you got to sort of guess how their relationships are defined. Like with the kid, he's probably the most like character that gets a lot of interpretation and analysis for what he is. Some people think he's like the secret hero. Others think he's like another monster who got somewhat redeemed in the end, who saved himself from becoming like Holden, but inevitably became like a monster all the same to him. Hence all the like sort of discovery there. It's
we
really
didn't really get his morals.
Yeah,
The kid, it was very. It seemed very. He was telling this. That's what we're led to believe, is that we're following this guy, but we really don't. Get his perspective on everything that's going down, whether this is acceptable, if this is moral or whatever like that. It's really kind of left in the background.
Yeah.
So like I feel like a general consensus is that none of that was acceptable. Like in terms of like if you're looking at it from like a moral perspective, but the like, so sometimes I read books, right, and I feel like it's like those like moral stands or those like moral introspections or analysis on the actions and how it's affecting people and how the character perceives himself in relation to like the situation and like in relation to other, like sometimes I feel like that is unnecessary. Like it's like, because like we kind of we know everybody, like Cormac McCarthy is talking about like a tree made out of like dead babies. Like you want to know what I think about that? Like, you know what I mean? So it was like the fact that like we were not like delving into that whole thing. It allowed as a reader, it allowed me to like explore other things. Like my mind was continually in an expanded, like I don't know how to explain it, but I was not reading stuff that was obvious to me. You know what I mean? Like I was just like the story was just like like different in a way that I like, and the execution of not really going through what was going on in his mind, and then like having the kid's perspective later on towards the end of the book, where he kind of sort of redeems himself. Thing that was happening, I think it was brilliant execution, because even though like while the book was going on, previous to that, we had some scenes where the ex-priest was watching the kid just staring at the judge, like lying down on this on his bed and just staring at the judge. So there's a curiosity. It's like, what exactly is going on in his head? And you don't really know it. And then towards the end, it's kind of like revealed to you that, damn, this guy was actually going through some like the way everything just comes together is brilliant.
Yeah, I think with the first chapter of the book itself, it sort of gives you the idea of like what the kid's about. He had an inherent inhibition for violence, but it got worse by the fact he's felt abandoned by his dad, is sort of why he's been so disgraced, why he's so vile and just cruel in a lot of regards. He never had a maternal figure. He never had any kind of
his birth was actually violent,
Yeah.
right? His mother died as a result of giving birth to him.
Yeah, and you get the symbolism there too with the playdits right there where the stars were shining and there was like a comet streak right above. It was sort of representing the fact the kid had a sense of like purpose and glory, like there was a sort of defense for him, but he lost that as he went along in life because he kept going down a downward streak of violence. Like he was seeking affection, some sort of like gratification in the violence itself, when he was like fighting with people, trying to when he met with Toadvine, he murdered someone without like a second thought. Like he had
because they go at it, and then all of a sudden they're like best of friends right after that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They became best friends from that. Like he's a very like sort of like idiot in a lot of ways. He's very dumb. Like he's very simple-minded, but he's clever. But he has a lot of ideas what to do. But he's very internalized. He's very quiet. He's a kid basically. He doesn't know how to communicate these feelings beyond just lashing out and fighting and like just doing whatever he wants basically. And we get a lot of that towards like the middle of the book where he's not even like a person anymore. He's just a part of the violence. He's a part of the Latin gang. He's just going around killing, scalping, raping.
Yeah.
But he has weird moments of affection because that's what he wants at the end of the day for me. Like he just wants someone to just like care about him in a lot of ways. And he had that with Holden and Tobin and Toadvine, everyone there. Like he had some weird paternal affections within a lot of regards. But at the end of the day, he's a bad person. He's objectively speaking a horrible human being who was complicit and a coward in a lot of ways. And he's a character that's not traditional in a lot of ways. And I can get why people don't like him, but just how he's characterized and defined, it's very subtle, it's very delicate. And you're meant to interpret, okay, is he just a kid who doesn't know any better, who got led into this, or is he just naturally like this? Is it a combination of both? Or is it just how we are?
Like personally, like I liked him. I thought he was like I don't think there was any character that on that level was kind of like redeemable, or like everyone was like a bad character and everything. But and it did show like a little sense of empathy. Even Toadvine had his moments when like for instance
Toadvine was the only one I saw any, like he had these gangster morals, like we can do all this, but you don't hit a wall, like he had these certain morals. Toadvine at one time put the gun to the judge.
I was just about that was the exact scene I was
we
about
get to see that from maybe Tobin at the end. Like Tobin was enamored by the judge, but towards the end, there's something happened where he fell off. But at least with Toadvine, we heard like, they didn't need to die. And he was coming at the judge. We didn't get anything from the kid, it seemed, However, the kid was the only one that we got to witness do, decent things for people as the story moved on. Give somebody water or
the same with the Delawares. Yeah, the Delawares. And he's just like, okay. And he's trying to convince them like to not kill the Delaware because he's still alive, and then Gladden just he's fucking useless. Kill him already. Like there's no point. He's like pretty much dying, and it's just like he gets into a lot of arguments, a lot of conflict. And I think like a very clear scene of like Toadvine's morals as well was when Colden just killed like the Apache boy out of nowhere, and everyone just got pissed off. Because like Toadvine specifically gets like characterized as a knight, kind of in a weird way. He gets compared to that.
I want to bring that up a little bit later. I'm sorry. I'll be jumping in like double dutch. This whole thing where we don't see the judge's actual evils, the whole story, right? So when we talk about violence, we have to. When we talk about this book, you need to define what violence is. Is violence, projecting your will onto anything and everything. And when I say will, like nature as well. And we have these, because everything he did is hidden. What about all the violence that is ingrained into the structures of our society? Capitalism and greed.
Colonialism,
buildings and building things on land that we're wiping animals out, we're doing these things, and all that is not really seen. That is something behind the scenes, something greater. And with the judge, we never really got to actually see him do, like, all of a sudden you're talking and a girl's missing. We know it's the judge. And a child's missing. We know it's the judge, but you don't get to see that. There's like this mythical power in the background, even in our own society, that we don't see the evils that we are committing because we are so ignorant to that fact. I just was, I put those things together. There's just so
Yeah,
much to
yeah, yeah.
digest with this, and why, we could sit here and argue about, what his intent was. And I think that was this 1985, right? I think we're at 50 years of people trying to understand my man's intent in this book, right? I just think that's phenomenal. That's amazing. And there's just, upon a reread, I'm just going to be more mind blown because of, as I start to grow more as a reader and as a consumer of violence in our society, and I was a sociology major, things like that. It's just so much more comes to light when you continually think about what goes on in these books.
Yeah, but
Or
you see,
this book.
so the thing is, I feel like Cormac McCarthy takes advantage of something in the human psyche about like whatever your imagination is usually worse than like reality. Like your imagination, you have there are no limits to your imagination. So I feel like that's something he does with the judge a lot, where like we from what he says and some of his actions that are like clear for us to analyze. It's like, okay, like we know, kind of have an idea of the judge, and then the stuff that is implied that he does, and we know it's him, but like it's not said explicitly. We start what, like, he allows us to imagine that, and whatever we imagine in our head, like what you imagine might be different from what AJP imagined, what I imagine, but like we all know that it's terrible.
What
And
was in
I
that
feel
shed?
like
What do you think was in that shed at the end?
like, who knows, man, but like my imagination, like, and exactly what I'm saying right there is just like, who the hell knows,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
a common thing about this whole book is it has a lot of quotes from figures like Oswald Spengler, Friedrich Nietzsche, a lot of these like figures about the pessimism and decline of civilization. And the thing with Holden is that despite these quotations and stuff like that, making him sort of universal and very much encompassing these ideas and these concepts, Holden himself is a very simple person. Like he has all these virtues, all these talents. He can sing, he can dance, he can like speak in multiple languages. He can do everything a person would think would be a virtue, and he twists that into something more macabre, more twisted and more malformed. And it's sort of like a commentary on a lot of like the transience of evil, because it's a very much like everyone in this book is a bad person. The Comanche tribes, the colonialists, the cowboys, everyone's encompassed by the evil and taken control of by that evil inherent within all of us, basically. As Holden says later on, like, war is God. That we have a sort of like a unifying thing in war fire itself. We either hate it, we loathe it, we become participants in it, and we kind of ignore it at times at the same time. Because I remember specifically this book was written like when the Vietnam War was very much fresh in a lot of people's mind, and a lot of the war crimes that are committed by Holden and the Gladden Gang, while also real during the scalping years, also happened during Vietnam. It's sort of replicating how we don't really change all too much. We just develop new justifications for committing these actions and or having reasons for them, and we protest. But it happens again and it happens again. It happens again. It's happened again and again and again and again and again. It's very much about sort of just how there might be an argument for us being naturally evil at times, or have a predisposed into violence in a lot of
I think
regards.
that's what the epilogue was saying when he was talking about that machine that made this circle, and this circle can't live without that circle, and all the way to the horizon. I thought he was talking about us as human beings and our propensity for violence and the cycle of violence that continues throughout generations and generations.
Yeah, because specifically this book was written like right around the time where the industrialization was starting to become more popular, and we had reasons for going for oil, for metal, for like a lot of resources and ores and stuff like that. We had more reasons to commit violence, and we try to justify it within that regard. or you have like, you know, the more primal aspects, you know, nationalism, patriotism, racism, sexism, a lot of the reasons to like do these acts of violence, and not a whole lot to not do them beyond just fighting against that. And it's a common thing there where you have sort of like this being a symbolism of male patriarchy at times. I don't mean to get like too crazy with like the gender analysis, but there is like a common motif of like the feminine side, the more like female half of our existence. Like, it's without the control, that more caring and sympathetic and motherly side, we kind of have this disposition towards violence. That's why I think the scene where the kid, after he runs away and he finds the body of that dead little girl, it's sort of a weird turning point for him, and it's a very like quiet and sullen moment where he just sort of like has a switch in his head. He just sort of tries to recontextualize a lot about what he has done and how he feels he needs to change a lot. And over the course of the book, you can feel that he has a weird sense of conflict, but he's also a willing participant with his morals and ethics being so skewed, and so like yearning for affection and love in his own weird fucked up way. And you can see that a lot in the book, and how sort of pathetic a lot of like the reasons for why we do this are, which we can go into later. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
So like there's this idea that and like I like the fact we're talking about it in context to like violence and like atrocities in terms of like a collective, in a collective sense, like a group of people, like, you know, there's this thing about like the unconscious mind, and like how like our unconscious mind, which makes up like our animalistic natures, like our most base desires to survive or for survival, which is basically primed around like sexual sex, shelter, like just all these things are like what you're willing to do for them. Like everybody's potential to murder someone or kill someone comes from their unconscious, right? And that kind of informs their subconscious, which informs their conscious mind. Carl Jung had like a theory of the mind that was kind of like similar like that. And when we talk about like a collective people committing all these atrocities, like in the modern day, we can look more to like stuff that happened during World War II, for instance. So I'm getting somewhere with this, but like, so there are some people that would say, well, like if I was back in those, like there's a reason why I don't necessarily have like a moral like argument or a moral like perspective too much on that, because there are some people that would say that, oh, if I was there back in the day, this is the decision I would have made because I'm a good person. And no, it doesn't work like that. Like once there's a thing about human nature where like I feel like if this is something that is brewing in the unconscious mind of people, and people come together and everybody's doing it, it's no longer just about plain morality. It's not longer about good and evil. It's about, this is what you're doing in this time, and you're driven by forces that are not necessarily conscious. You are acting without really understanding or willing. You're not even willing to analyze your actions, at least from a moral perspective, because this is what everybody's doing, and you can get swept away in it. So like the kid, for instance, the kid is someone that I feel like, okay, had a moment where he was able to snap. His conscious mind snapped for a second, and he was able to like, you know, withdraw himself from that collective unconscious
The
drive.
dynamics.
Yes, those dynamics. But and like Toad Vine and all, so these are people that where it showed like just enough awareness to be able to like show some level of humanity. But when I say humanity, like I mean like in a positive light, but they what they were doing collectively, and all that is also a part of humanity. So
Yeah, I believe this gang, you know, that they entered, you know, they needed it for their survival, you know, and I believe you brought up like World War II, right? And we're talking, you know, Germany, and like the people that were doing these things. Like the German people, most of the time, they didn't have a choice. They had a choice, but they kind of didn't. Like if they attempted to hide a Jewish person or something, like they would be executed.
Yeah.
They had to go along for their own survival, and you can see it within that group dynamics of the gang that many of these people had to go along with this for their own survival. Toadvine was a wanted man. We don't really know much about the ex-priest, but the kid, when he wasn't in this gang, he was out there starving, living day by day here. And I think what you were trying to were these group dynamics where things occur and you're just going along for survival.
Yeah.
You can't really put a foot down or that, your life might, depend on that decision there.
Yeah. Like, can you imagine someone trying to stop the judge from doing what he wants? Like, or like, or it's like, it's like, what would a good person do if you find yourself in that crowd? Like, what are you? You just like you go with it, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and building off that specifically, like there's a lot of allusions towards like the greater philosophers during like the age of decadence, sort of when Germany was in a decline. There was a lot of philosophers trying to figure out ways to sort of like fix their civilization, and obviously Oswald Spengler and Nietzsche were like one of the more like centralized figures of like inspiration for the Nazi Party and everything like that. And it just how happens that Holden quotes them specifically, like he directly quotes some stuff regarding Spengler, quoting
Guys,
Nietzsche regarding like the will of power and sort of like ambition and sort of how we justify a lot of ourselves in our own contextualization. And building off Jung specifically, McCarthy, I have no idea what's his opinion on Jung. I think he kind of doesn't like him a bit because some of his ideas are hokey, but he's a beautiful writer and has a lot of interesting ideas. You can sort of view Holden as someone that's a mix between a subconscious person and a conscious person, in that he has a lot of intellectual understandings and complexities and nuances to how he views the world, and he knows how the world functions, but he doesn't really give a shit. He sort of just does whatever he wants to do because he can. And it's a cynicism of intelligence commonly. Like it's sort of like the classic issues within human nature. And Holden
You
sort
can
of
see a little of the Ubermensch in the judge's outlook on life. Like a man needs to be a man. And as I believe you touched on earlier, a little bit of the gender, differences and things. But,
yeah. And this is said by people smarter than me, so I'm not gonna pretend like I had this like unique idea. There's some pretty good analysis regarding like a Jungian version of Blood Meridian, how you can interpret that, and it's sort of like you can view Holden as sort of like the world egg, the encompassing ideas of like a new world each time a new civilization enters decline. Like that famous line, this will happen again with different suns, with different worlds, with different races, stuff like that. It's a paraphrase, it's not directly quoted. But Holden has a point. Like, regardless, like how complex or different a civilization will become, we'll have this issue. We'll have this fault again. Even no matter how autonomous we are, we have an inherent nature to ourselves at time when it comes to like their predication for violence. And at times he's speaking nonsense. Like the thing about Holden is he has a very pretentious way of talking because everyone around him is stupid and they don't really understand.
that was one of the negatives, I thought. Like he's sitting there giving this gold of dialogues to a bunch of idiots. I thought, I was just like, how are they? Do these guys understand what the fuck he's saying?
Well, it's like the kid can't read. Like we gotta understand that first. Like obviously these are like illiterate drunkards, idiots, people who don't really know any better, and they're easy to manipulate and control. And Holden, like he's done that with people who were mayors, governors, Native Americans. He's manipulated like everyone around him because he knows how to make them hear what they want to say, and all he really wants to explain to them, basically, the only person that's really onto his like intellectual level is Tobin, and Tobin's a coward and a hypocrite. Like he's a religious apostate who's partaking in like genocide and warfare because he wanted money. He's like the most like worldly man. And I think that's a purposeful thing by McCarthy. Like he's trying to basically have the common person argue against this pedantic and it's almost like pretentious way of talking. versus how we are, because we have a very simple view of how we view our morals and our ethics, and that's what kind of makes Holden hard to argue against, is that he can just say whatever he wants and he knows he'll be right in every conversation he has. And that's an aspect I really do love about Holden, and what I love about the book is that it's sort of a case where intellectualism in McCarthy's works tends to be sort of a curse. Like, the more we understand about the world, the more we kind of grow to loathe it and want to fix it. Or you could become an absolute nihilist and just do whatever you want at times. And it's sort of clear with that with Holden. Like, he just doesn't care. He doesn't really have any intention to fix. He just wants to keep on going and having fun until the day he dies, which is going to be never, because we'll discuss that later about Holden and what he is. But it's a common thing about, like, sort of like the book itself. It's the layman, the common person, versus like these intellectual greater evils against like the bulwark of the world and questioning our inherent nature at times. Like, you know, sort of like Jonathan Edwards did back in the day during his whole sermons, and how that sort of worked regarding theology and how we view ourselves as inherent evils, inherent sinners, inherently damned because of what we did, no matter what view you have regarding religion at times. It's a complex thing, and it's a very beautiful work and how it's interwoven within that theme, just sort of how we sort of have this constant conflict internally and externally, and how the world itself is sort of twisted and morphed by us a lot. It's
Nice.
you can see that head a lot within, like, you know, symbolism regarding, like, you know, like the reason there's so many descriptions of like the scenery and the landscape is because it's representative of how the minds are going for our characters, and how it's sort of declining the worse they go on. They become more savage and disgusting and brutal and just overall like barbaric as they go along. It's a very beautiful, like, sort of like how like the literal earth itself is symbolic of how bad their mental state's becoming over the course of the book.
Yeah. Well, according to Shogi, he would stop by asking him nicely. So, like, yeah.
You could ask him to dance.
Yo.
There's the dance, bears that don't.
Oh god, I love that scene a lot. Like, it's just like so good. And like what I love about that scene specifically is that it was mentioned that one of like the Big Dipper was specifically one of like the constellations you get to see a lot. And the thing about the Big Dipper is that's symbolic of the mother bear. And because, of course, a bear comes storming in, and that's sacrificed and killed. And it very much sort of like builds up sort of like the tension there, because it's so quiet and ambient, and then you just have like this ritual sacrifice over there, and there's just screaming in the background. These two are just having an argument to themselves, like no one's there at all. It's such a good fucking scene. I love that. I love that final scene between them.
AJP, how many times have you read Blood Meridian?
I make it a choice to read it yearly. How to say?
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's incredible. That's
maybe
incredible.
Yeah.
Your thoughts about it are very, very clear, and I need to. It's a book that I definitely want to reread like a couple times. I don't know if I'll do once a year, but like I know before this year is over, I probably want to do it again. Just like it's I feel like there are so many aspects of this book that you can appreciate either as a reader or as a writer. And as a writer, I'm just like, holy hell, like he's like the syntax, of course, was a bit weird with all the ands and no full stops and everything, but at the same time, like it had flow. Like it's like why can he pull it off, and it reads so beautiful and it flows so well in the head, but then somebody else that does the same thing without, it just looks clunky or everything. It did take me a while to get used to the style of writing and the prose, but the writing itself was so good, and it the way it helped complement like the story itself. So it was just such a crazy experience for me, like just observing it as a writer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can see like a lot of the inspirations he's had on like a lot of authors, like, you know, David Foster Wallace, Joe Abercrombie, R. Scott Baker, obviously our little favorite here. Just a lot of that, that's like the beauty in that prose. And the reason for the ands, obviously, is because McCarthy has sort of like the James Joyce and Ernest Hemingway kind of philosophy of writing, in that get rid of the use of punctuation really focus on like making the syntax and the book readable rather than like, focus on like being pretty or being like, beautifully complex in the syntax. Just write the damn fucking sentence. That's what you gotta do, pretty much. That's like the major writing philosophy McCarthy has. Just like, just fucking write. Don't think about it. Don't complicate it. Just
you mentioned Baker, you mentioned Jarvis Combry, you mentioned all these guys. What about you? Like, for anyone who has read AJP's work, and Dan, I feel like you're absolutely going to love it. You can definitely see the Cormac McCarthy influence there very, very clearly. So, like, I don't know if I've mentioned it on this channel before, but like, you guys need to read Anarchy. I feel like it's a delve into the mind of AJP right here, where you don't quite know what's going on in there, but like at the same time, you when you listen to him, you know that this guy knows exactly what the hell he's talking about.
Definitely want to know.
Yeah, you want to know. You want to know. So, and by the way, like, just by the side, we're going to be doing like I want to do a read along for his book Anarchy, and there's a big epic project that we're working on. This is the first time I'm mentioning it, but like, if you want to hop along for that that journey and be part of the process, then we'll probably start a read along sometime next week or something. And I recommend anyone who enjoys anything dark and beautiful to like be a part of it, because I haven't finished reading Anarchy, but from what I've read of it so far, I am absolutely in love. And yeah.
And basically, it's besides that, just to get back on topics, I don't get too self-masturbatory. What do you guys think specifically, besides Holden? Who would you say would be your favorite character out of like all the little gangs?
Toadvine.
How would you do?
Like, because you concentrate so much on what Judge Holden says. I did kind of like Toadvine, but I had so much more interest in the ex-priest Tobin because of this, this religious tone that we had. Like, he's an ex-priest, but we didn't get much from him. I wanted to see, why are you here? They touched on it very quickly, in one of Judge's sermons. And then, I believe after all that was said and done, it was Tobin who was like, you got to kill this guy. You got the chance. Like, he's a different beast. Like, you'll never get another chance. So you're like, what made him change? Because he was the one who was so enthralled by the judge at first. He's the one who told you about the judge. The judge is this, he does that, he does this, he does it perfectly all around. And you're like, man, this guy really is intrigued by the judge. What happened? And it was it was a little bit of a letdown for me, because I did, you didn't get into the minds of these other characters. You definitely understood, the judge and his stance on life, but you did not get the stance on life from the others. And not that took anything away from this book, but it does make you think. Maybe it's what McCarthy was doing. Like, how would you feel about what's going on? Rather than, I'm not going to give you what my other characters are thinking about what's happening. Obviously, we knew Glanton was a sick fuck and he was cool with everything. But obviously, at some point, the ex-priest Tobin fell out with Judge Holden and thought that he was not the person he thought he was at some point, from when he told, the kid about how much, what he was like. He's a savant, Dutch, he speaks Dutch and all this, to, the end of the book where Tobine's like, we need to wipe this guy off the planet.
Yeah. And just to sort of go off two things, well, I'll tell you guys what my favorite character is besides Holden. But the thing about Tobin throughout the book is that he's very much a bitch. That's what he is. He's a little bitch.
Well, they all are, aren't they? I mean, well, other than, you're right, I think.
Yeah, Tobin's the biggest bitch for me, because one, he's a hypocrite. Like, he's a major religious hypocrite. Like, beyond the fact like he casts off the cloth and we don't really know what his crime was specifically that made him like leave, or like if it's just a case of like loss of faith or money or things like that. But the major thing is that he's not the one trying to pull the trigger on Holden. He's telling the kid to do it because in his own weird way, I always felt Tobin tried to make himself more religiously like greater than Holden, like because Holden's proof to him that there's something supernatural in the world, that there's something greater, and that there might be a God, and that it might be proof that God's kind of malignant and evil, and he's trying to like sort of like groom the kid into being something else, something different. And even to like the bitter end though, like I always felt like he was trying to stick to these morals and ethics he clearly didn't believe in, but just like clung on to because he had to. Like he had no sense of like freedom or will or any kind of like religious like faith or like worship. He was very material.
He was very like he was very surface level with it, and I feel like, but I feel like his character only had that to hold on to. It was like his whole identity was so invested in being a priest and like holding on to these values, even if like he didn't believe in them, like and they were contrary to his own actions. And I feel like, and like not I feel like there are a lot of people like that today in real life. So it made his character for me feel very alive, very 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 like real. I cannot say any of the characters in the book were quite relatable, but for me, like there were things that when they happened, like they just pissed me off, or they just like rubbed me off a certain way. And Toad Vine's like reaction to it it's like what I want. It's like if I wanted something to happen, if I was there and I wanted something to happen, like what would I do? Toad Vine was the one that, you know, most of the time he would just like take an action, say something that I was just like, okay, somebody said that. Let's continue through this this experience.
Yeah.
By the way, just before you go, Shelf-Sheltered is here. Thank you so much for showing
What's up,
up.
Bryce?
And,
What's up, man?
I feel like you're going to enjoy this book when you read it, and I would love to know your thoughts. I don't know if you're still here, but like, thank you for showing up. I appreciate it.
So yeah, for me, my favorite character is actually two. And one's gonna be weird, one's gonna be also kind of weird. It's Gladden. I really love Gladden a lot, and Black Jackson. The thing about
I like Black Jackson. Too. Black Jackson.
That scene at the fire. I love that.
Yeah. I love that scene. Like, yeah. So I was like, screw this guy.
I can sit by this fire. He went and got a machete. I was like, hey.
yeah,
I love that dude.
Yeah, so the thing about John Joel Gladden himself, besides the fact the gang's named after him, like he definitely feels like he's a Ponzi for Holden. However, the thing about Gladden is that he's kind of the most tragic character. So in real history, like he's an actual real historical figure. He was a guy who had his family murdered supposedly by Yuma Indians or Apache Indians. It was one of those tribes specifically. And he basically went on like a war quest to avenge them. He remarried, and it's been sort of theorized that he was always kind of a psychopath or a sociopath in a lot of regards. He had a lot of like horrific like inclinations already inherently to himself in reality. But basically the whole point about Gladden is that he's such a like a non-historical figure. Like you only really heard about him in this book. But it was with his death that the whole reason we had the Yuma massacre and the whole Yuma Mexican Indian War that went down there specifically. And that lost 15,000 people. 15,000 people died because this guy ended up dying specifically. And what I loved about Gladden specifically is that he has such a weird like sense of morals and ethics and philosophies to himself. The one like specifically like the scene with the dog, that was such a weirdly like human scene for him. Like this is the guy who shot a cat and a goat, like started robbing people, shooting people. He seemed like the type of guy who just loved doing whatever Holden told him to do, just so long as he just got what he wanted, which was just killing people. And then you get this scene where he just interacts with a dog and he's just like, give me food now. Give me the food. Give me the food. I want to feed the dog. And he's kind of a dick to it, admittedly. Like he treats it like shit, but he kind of has a weird love and affection for that dog. And then we get the scene by the campfire before like they start going into war, where he just has one of the few rare monologues in the entire book where he just says he had forsworn every matter of ethic and code and morals. And he had sworn himself to the fire that burned as deep as the earth stone itself, when men rose up from the darkness in the pre-dawn of light. That's just the paraphrase of what he was thinking there. But Gladden sort of just kind of came to terms with the fact that he's a piece of shit and he's never going to change. And he kind of had a big old fucking hoorah moment, but he still died pathetically in the end, where like the Indians, they get him, they just cleave him into the head. Then they tie his body around to like the leg of his dog and they just burn it. So that way it just runs through the desert. And what I really kind of found sad about that is like the one connection he had like in his life, he twisted and ended up getting it killed in the end. And it's one of the reasons why I like Glennon a lot. It's like he's just a blatant dickhead and a sociopath. He's a monster. But he started out as a guy who's just sort of doing this because his family was murdered. And he was sort of just on a quest for revenge. And he ended up losing any type of like moral conviction or code. And he just became another monster to the war itself. And the other reason I like Black Jackson specifically is I'm not sure if you guys noticed this throughout the book, besides like, you know, the baptism scenes that he had with Holden, like sort of like embracing all his morals and ethics. It's kind of implied that Black Jackson's gay throughout the book and that he's having a sexual relationship with Holden. He doesn't really have much interest in the whores and the prostitutes, and he seems to specifically share a tent with Holden a lot more. And he has a lot more affection and drawn attraction towards Holden specifically.
Well, you see, I didn't pick that up. I didn't pick that up, but like in hindsight, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
they both had the same cotton like shawl on when they showed up there. It was towards the end, and it was with that river crossing or something. They were taxing people, and you know, they showed back up, and the judge is standing on the hill in some sort of shawl, and Jackson was right there with him as well.
Yeah, he had such a weird like drawn attraction to him, and it's a theory. It's never been definite, but it's been kind of hinted at that they had such a weird sexual attraction towards each other, and it's also brings up another character I think a lot of people find interesting, the Idiot. What did you guys think of the good old Idiot, like the guy that one of the few people Holden saved from dying in the book? Do you guys remember him specifically?
I remember him.
The guy, he's got him on a chain, and he's got his parasol, and he's walking like some dude out of a freaking messed up Disney movie. Yeah, it was
the Idiot.
I was wondering, just with the like, with the people that he attracted in the beginning. We're talking about the Glanton gang, and then we see that they're very unintelligent, you know, and he just took the most unintelligent one with him to keep him around. I wanted more from the Idiot. Was that his name? I feel bad just calling him.
He's literally just called the Idiot.
Yeah.
That's just fucked up. You know, I want to give him a name. God damn it. Anyway, Tweedledee. All right. I wanted to understand that relationship a little. I wanted more from Tweedledee throughout the book, because I found him interesting. You know, being locked up, and then these women coming and get him out of the cage. What I really wanted to happen is when they were washing him just like bite into somebody's carotid and just take those women out. Because as I was reading, this book is so violent and has so many different messages. I was reading the book and I'm just like, dude, bite him. Come on. Yeah, they cleaned him up nice. You know, they put like a suit on him and stuff. I was like, that's not what I want.
That is something so interesting for me. I find about Grimdark, because like it takes my mind or like not just Grimdark, but like dark stuff like that. It takes my mind to places where I'm like, okay, like I'm okay, like I've come to terms with violence and all the morality and all of that, and like like the world is so surreal, and I've become a part of it, and I want like violent stuff to happen, and sometimes I catch myself, I'm like, what, like who is this person, But like I really like, I didn't get that experience with the Idiot himself, but like there are times in the book where I'm just like when that kid was talking shit to the kid like at the end of the book, I was like, shoot him, just like put a bullet in him, But yeah, Like are you like 15-year-old, you don't even know what this dude has been through. You're just coming and running your mouth. I'm just like, yeah, like
Yeah, I can't stand those. I would have shot him.
Yeah.
I can't stand those type of kids.
That actually brings up something I think this book doesn't get enough like credit for. This book's fucking hilarious. It has a lot of like dark black jokes like scattered throughout like the whole thing. Like there's like some like very like obviously funny things like like the guy juggling the chihuahuas and the guy's not knowing what the fuck a chihuahua is. Holden just shooting the goat and just fucking laughing his ass off. That like just like the whole like little small jokes that just like slipped through that I don't think gives like enough credit because this book is fucked up.
You're way darker than I am because I felt bad for that goat. He like hit up against. It was the goat when he like leaned up against the wall and he like slid down. I'm like, that poor fucking goat, man. He's gonna eat that.
I found that scene funny because Glennon's just like being so nice. Like it's like a usual like exchange. He's just like, oh,
yeah, he shot at the cat and the cat just disappeared. And
like there wasn't even any gore.
There's like, your imagination going. I'm thinking he's splattered against the wall and stuff. Yeah.
It's like some Tom and Jerry shit. Like I always find that scene funny because like he's just like so normal, and then he just fucking pops both of them, and the guy's like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you do that?" And it's just like it happens throughout the whole book where it's just Gladden, like he's just like a major punchline because he's just such a dick, but it's just so fucking uniquely funny. And one of the funnier parts, it was with Brown specifically, Dan Brown, that guy. He was like pawing off one of the shotguns he had. It was like this beautiful and inortly crafted. Like you get a whole pair. Yeah,
I was going to ask you who that was.
Yeah, that whole paragraph about like how good and how beautiful the book is, specifically like not book, but the shotgun itself is.
The shotgun, yeah.
Yeah, and then
he's like, saw it. He's like, nah, saw. Go ahead, saw into it.
It's like why would I? It's just like yo, but it's a perfect weapon. Why would I want to do that? Yeah, I know.
That could be symbolism for this book, really. It's like he's got such beautiful writing, and he just freaking, hits you and falls into you with the violence and the grit and the dirt.
I feel like Cormac McCarthy had a lot of fun writing this book. This is why, like initially, I was just saying I feel like he let everything, like he literally left it on the pages. Like it's because it's so multifaceted. Like you can view it from so many different perspectives, and and of course when you're trying to analyze it from like what was going through his head when he was writing this, some things there feel very whimsical, but it doesn't affect the story. Like it's just in theme with everything.
Yeah.
Justin Butcher, how are you doing, by the way? Like, glad to have you here.
Nice to meet you, Justin. And just to go ahead and say about McCarthy's like writing process, beyond the fact that he has like a very good like personal editor he's like good friends with, McCarthy edits his own stuff. So he edits it down himself. He makes it its own perfect thing because he thinks he has control of the whole process. And apparently, like he rewrote this book like 1,000 times. He wrote it so much over the course of like a good couple of years. And here's a neat little fact: Judge Holden did not exist for the first couple of first drafts. So the character of the judge himself, like this like enigma of a character, like he didn't even exist for like a good while he was writing the book until like I forget what it was specifically. It was around the time My Confessions got published, like this book, not My Confession published, just around the time he actually got around to reading that book, Samuel Chamberlain's whole thing, which actually had Holden in as a character in that. That's when he started adding him into like the story directly. So
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's so crazy because the judge is such a prominent character in the book.
He's
it's like I don't say I feel like the judge is what anchors the story. I feel like it's like he anchored the story. Like I understood, like I experienced I can't even say perspective because they never went into introspection, just dialogue and like actions and like crazy stuff. But like it was through the judge that I experienced the book. I feel like, so it's actually crazy that he wasn't part of like the wow, what would be such a different book without the judge.
Oh yeah, very different. Like the book itself had like a lot more monologues, a lot more internal characterization, a whole different kind of story. It was a lot more positive too. because around that same time he was writing All the Pretty Horses, The Passenger, and Whales and Men, an unpublished screenplay that you could only find on certain things. Basically, it was like it was a more like internalized character piece about the Western ethos. I don't know what the fuck happened that made him like turn it around so quickly and made it like all this like dark shit. Yeah, but basically, like the spirit of the book changed as he writes. Yeah, he doesn't plan or anything. He just goes along and just like lets his subconscious put whatever he wants onto it. The only thing that was kept from the first draft, besides like the opening chapter, was specifically the Comanche raid. He wrote that I think on the first try, and he just kept it.
Is that's the one with the herd of horses?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That was the scene. I think immediately after I read that scene, that was when I messaged Dan, and I was just like, "This book is nuts." I think I messaged you on Discord. I was just like, I can't.
The beauty of the writing.
The beauty. It was so good.
Unbelievable.
It was so good.
Yeah, it was getting so scouts standing up, and I know
these guys were not even waiting till like things settled down. They just went like the shock. And this, like I've watched a lot of author interviews where they're like, I watch a lot of like author interviews where they're just like, well, I write grimdark or I like dark stuff, but I don't like doing violence for the sake of it.
I think that's like pretty much.
It's like what is like? There's no point to it anyway. Like, so it's like don't try to like, if you like that stuff, you like it. Period. Like the book, like that scene is why you should. There's something really beautiful about that scene. It's horrible and it's dark and it's shock. There's a lot of shock value there, but like, I would not have it any other way, and I don't need my violence justified. If you understand what I mean, I don't need it justified. It is what it is.
And God, yeah, it's such a good.
Did a great video of that scene where they did the audiobook, but they did the words in this certain way. You got to look it up. With that community,
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
and it's like red, and it was like spear, and it was just, and they surrounded them, and the words surround like the way that they did it, and they gave it that, that a melody, a tone. Just the way they did it was absolutely phenomenal, and I'd suggest everybody who may talk about his writing and not like it, just go watch that video. It's not going to ruin nothing for you, but it was just phenomenal.
I mean that the writing itself is beautiful. Like the themes, like it was almost like I was watching it on a cinema screen. It was so well written and it just really captured it. Discount Zarathustra, thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. The Blood Meridian is one of my favorite books of all time as well. Yeah, and I'm sure that's a sentiment that like
I just read it right for the first time. Now it's up there for me.
It has to be. It has to be. It's like it's a classic of. It's classic. It's out there. It's out there. But yeah, AJP.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like. Cormac McCarthy, like he gets called like a lot of times like a poetic author. Like he's like a person who has an actual sense and keen idea of like what makes good poetry and what makes good writing. Yes. That whole thing just like felt like something out of like an epic poem, like something straight out of like, the Iliad, with like all the meters, all the like the lack of punctuation. It's just all so fluid and connected. Like the imagery, the way he uses simile, metaphor, alliteration, like. Just like everything comes together for like making this like so fucking beautiful. Like this specific scene where like the pony comes out like from the dust of cloud and like snaps at the kid and then just runs off.
And it's goes right back. Yeah.
Wow, it's crazy we can remember those specific.
And the dude with the arrow in him, and he thought he was still alive, and like, this is like. That's in my head cinematically.
Like just pulling out from the horse, like the lances are coming through, like them just like firing off wherever they could. Everyone's just getting fucking
to the ground or something with their shadows collapsing under. Oh, that's when I read that scene, I'm like, now I get what these people.
I instantly I feel like that was when after I read that, that was when like my brain adjusted to the writing.
Yeah.
Like, because it all of a sudden it was exciting to just read the writing itself. Like before it felt like a sludge, but then after that it's like, okay, this guy is it's different. It's different, you know.
God, and
He's
like
on another level.
he made it weird, like the way he can so easily describe like them like fucking like cutting off the genitals of the guys, making like a new vagina for them and like just fucking them, and it's so beautiful to read at the same time. You're so grossed out, and then you just go on to the next thing where they're just lifting up like mops of scalps and just like lifting them high, just like grunting, screaming. You're just like all this like things going on at once. It's so fluid and so beautiful, and then it just like has like a slow, low like decline, describing them like monks in prayer, and it's just like it's like so good. It's weird. It's weirdly orgasmic.
But it gives you, because it puts you in that scene because of how quickly everything is changing. Because you are like, you know, if you were there, you're obviously looking here, and this is how, and you're looking there, and the way it's, you know, the cadence is putting you in that scene because it's all very confusing. You're in the middle, you know, people are dying around you, and that's what your snapshots are. It was
it's very like snapshots, like you're looking left or like
and all of a sudden like a horse came out and bit at you, and you're like, what? But then you gotta, you know, make sure yourself is okay. You're looking around, and then, oh my God, he's only got one arrow, and I think he's all right. No, he's freaking dead. There's another one. It just kept popping, and the horse. That scene, epic. You need to go see that YouTube video.
I think he sent it to me on the private chat.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
good.
That scene's so
so good.
Like maybe depending on how it is, maybe I'll use it as a premise for like an animation or something on my channel. But
yes, it's really good. I loved it.
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna lie, like I watched it like 5 times.
I know
that day, you know, that I found it. I made my wife watch it. This isn't really my thing. And I'm like, dude, just watch it. You know, look how poetic it is. And she's like, meh. I'm like, just stab me in the heart now. Okay?
That reminds me of like trying to explain some of Lil Wayne's lyrics to like you know, someone like that's a little bit too, you know, because the metaphors are like, just like the
maybe I should be reading literary fiction now. You know, like, should I go back to Sword and Sorcery like this? I don't know if I can. You know, let me read more McCarthy. Okay, let me finish him, and like you know, maybe China Mieville. I hear that guy's pretty cool, but I'm gonna this book just set me on another, you know, another direction.
Yeah, if you can believe it, like even with like how beautiful the prose in this is, Suttree has like way better prose in this book. I don't know, like each book has its own personality, like I said, but like Suttree is like where McCarthy, like he goes full James Joyce, Henry Miller. It is some of like the most beautiful fucking prose you'll ever read ever. There's a scene where a guy is masturbating and the guy walks in on him masturbating. I'm just like, holy fuck, this is some beautiful masturbation he's writing about right here. It's so fucking good.
It's like when you can make everything sound so good just because like it's like your execution of your words are just, you know.
Yeah, and the best part about Suttree is like, even though it's dark and kind of depressing, the whole book is meant to be like a comedy. It's meant to be like a very like funny like book. Like the whole premise of the whole book starts off with a guy fucking watermelons and getting arrested for it and trying to be accused of bestiality because of it.
That'd be a sticky moment, you know.
Yeah.
It's such a fucking hilarious book. Trust me.
I need your ratings. Give me your top 5 of him.
Okay. So
wait, guys, I need to hype this up already. So this guy is like Cormac McCarthy's scholar. He knows everything about Cormac. I've not met someone that knows more about Cormac McCarthy's and his writing than this guy. So yeah, like take notes, like add this on your TBRs and stuff.
Okay, then. So the first one is going to be cheating because it's technically 2 books in one, but these books are meant to be read together. It's The Passenger and Stella Maris. I think this might be Cormac McCarthy's like last book ever, like he's ever going to write. But these two books are like, they're the most beautiful standoff you'll ever get. The first book is about a guy just sort of like coming out of a coma after being in a race car accident and sort of just going through the world and trying to deal with grief. And the second book, Stella Maris, is about a schizophrenic super genius. And that whole book is nothing but pure dialogue. There is no descriptions. There is no other like distractions, just pure, unadulterated dialogue for that. My second favorite book from McCarthy, it's probably Blood Meridian, because I really fucking love Blood Meridian. Third is Suttree. Fourth is The Sunset Limited. That's a play, but it's so fucking good. And my fifth is probably The Road, which I think almost everyone's read, but it deserves its place as being such a fucking masterpiece of
I'm sorry, you said The Road?
Yep, The Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So like
that was next on my list.
My poor brain. So like I feel like after reading this book, I am very, very excited about Cormac McCarthy, but at the same time, I'm going to have a big hangover, like reading hangover, because I feel like I need some time to like really digest this book, and I'm just going to I want to experience McCarthy, like, you know, I feel like I have a McCarthy mood right now. Yeah. Like I feel like I'll be in a state of mind where I'm like, you know what, it's time to pick up a Cormac McCarthy book. You know, maybe after I read so many bad books, and I'm like, you know what, nah, I need a guarantee that like I'm about to read something special. You know, so I feel Narso right there.
Yeah, just a quick warning. If you're gonna read The Passenger and Stella Maris, this deals with not only philosophy from like the beginning of civilization itself, but also very complex physics as well, like lots of quantum physics, a lot of complex ideas that you gotta have to sort of understand and like sort of analyze and discuss. So you're gonna have to do a lot of research for that book. I'm just gonna give you a quick warning for that, because it gets very, very dense, and I had to help out Narsil all the way through with that because it got absurdly difficult. And Outer Dark is also good. That book is also really good from McCarthy. It's about a brother and sister who commit incest, and there's like 3 supernatural beings that might not be supernatural coming after them because of that specifically. It gets brutal and it gets dark, and it's the only book of McCarthy that made Narsil cry. So that should tell you enough how bad it is.
Oh shit, Narsil cried.
Oh yeah.
Damn, you know, like Narsil is like has some really, really solid recommendations. He was when I first read the first Law, I was, always like talking about it, and then he was like, well, you haven't read McCarthy, you haven't read Scott Baker, you haven't read this, you haven't read that, like Narsil really, really put me on. So shout out to Narsil.
AJP, real quick, what character from Blood Meridian do you think is represented in The Prince of Nothing?
Oh, easily. Holden, Cleric specifically, is meant to be.
So you're going with Cleric. Yeah,
Cleric and the Scalpers are meant to be the Holden gang specifically. And Cleric and Holden are meant to be different opposites there. Cleric is meant to be more positive.
I went with Nair being,
oh, really?
Scovaldi being, their god is war.
Yeah, that is true. But specifically with Nair, like he's more about the fact that their god was murdered and they're focused on a deicide mission. And there's that's more of a different kind of philosopher. That's from Philip Mainlander, who's the main inspiration for one of Baker's whole things about the shattered god and all that stuff. I can't get into that too much. It's a complex thing, but that's what Nair is in more reference to. But there is actually a Cormac McCarthy reference in The Thousandfold Thoughts that Baker hid. That's specifically in reference to the child, the father of the man from the opening chapter of Blood Meridian, and also the survivor and the crab kid. That's meant to be
really nothing for Epic.
Yeah,
Epic. You need to get You
I
want
know,
something
I
good.
know, I
You want to
know.
keep your fantasy going.
You gotta read it.
And good
I
prose,
know.
a good book. You need to get into the second apocalypse, man.
I know. Like not everybody liked Nair, but like Nair was one of my favorite characters.
I love
There was-
Nair. That
There,
dude's
I wasn't
there
too
was
big
a
on Nair.
moment.
I could be
Are
wrong.
you kidding me, bro? There was a time. There was a scene where, and I know this is like this is a different book right now. This is the Prince of Nothing, but like, God damn it, there was a scene where like Nair was preparing to fight, and like Baker was like describing what was going on in Nair's mind because Nair was having like an inner monologue, and it sounded like it. I felt like I don't know if you guys DBZ the first moment when Goku went Super Saiyan when he was fighting Frieza. Like I felt it was like it was like I was reading anime. It was so exciting, you know. Like I was like, this is my man because I know how violent he could get, and I love how he didn't respect anybody. Like he didn't care if it was Kellis or he didn't care if it was fucking Comfort. He didn't care who you were. Nair was like Nair everywhere. Like he was not thinking
most violent of
politically. He
all.
was not
Breaker of horse.
Yeah.
the breaker of. Oh my god, man! Nair
Dude,
is one of my characters.
Just to drop in, my favorite Nair moment, definitely Thousandfold Thoughts. It's when like he's fighting all those soldiers at once, and like he grabs a spear midair, throws it back at the guy, and like it shatters through the shield, and he just falls dead. And he's just talking shit like, "I rape your wives, I fuck your daughters, husbands. I am Nair, breaker of horsemen." He's just talking all that shit, and he just jumps in and starts just kicking ass like full armored dude. It is just
my god,
so
man!
metal. I love it. It was
I
such a good
love Nair. Like anyway, but this is not about the Prince of Nothing. Maybe we should do that.
We could go off on so many things, you know.
I know.
Yeah.
That book series is so fucking good.
So I just got the eye from my missus. So like we have to round up real soon. Yeah, like I'm so glad for everyone who showed up today, and it was such an experience like talking this book with you guys, because I feel like when you read Blood Meridian, you have so many thoughts, so many like projections, so many things you want to talk about, and it's a pity when you can't talk about it and you have to keep it within, because usually like we have friends that don't read books, where book readers are kind of like isolated, kind of, you know. So I'm glad like we have this community and we're able to share this space and, you know, talk about different things in Blood Meridian that you know, appeal to us. Thank you everyone for showing up. Check out AJP's channel, check out Dan's channel. And by the way, I'll put both their channels in the link down in the description after this. And by the way, we're also doing like a read along for AJP's book, Anarchy, and we have a big project planned. So yeah,
Like to jump
be
in
a part of that. Yeah, 100%. Like I think I'll announce it on the Discord and like, yeah, DM you as well. So thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday, and yeah, read Blood Meridian if you haven't.
Yep. Definitely. See you guys. Have a good one.
Peace.